The Pentax P30, released in around about 1985, and one of its key features was that it had auto exposure mode, so when the camera featured an A lens or had an A lens onto it, then the camera essentially made all the decisions, so it became a point and shoot, allowing the photographer to enjoy just focusing on the photography. However, I'm going to be using it without a lens that has an A. It's the Pentax M 1.750mm lens, and so consequently I'm going to get metered manual mode, which means the camera will suggest an exposure and then I can choose to either accept it or deviate from that. Here we have the setup. Here's our still life, our bowl of or vase of flowers, and arranged on an ordinary table. And we've just got a simple grey blind. You could include an ordinary window if you wanted for the extra light, but I've chosen to just go for a plain. I'm not going to perhaps experiment maybe with either blurring the grey or whether including that texture. I'm not sure yet, so we'll see how we get on. The camera in portrait mode, because I want to include the whole of the vase and the flowers. And I want it quite a tight crop there, so I don't have too much. Got a little bit of grey around the side, and I'm focused in the middle bit of the flowers here, the red. And I've chosen f11. That should, in theory, make everything from the vase through to the back in focus. Should have no problem with that. So let's go ahead and take the photograph. We wind our film on and take the photograph. Now it says at f11 it's 1 second, so let's give that a go. For a second image, I'm turning my attention to these front white and purple flowers. I think that'll make quite a nice contrast in black and white. And I'm going to focus in on the central area, and as a consequence the camera will meter off that area. I'd like to get a very small amount in focus and kind of get it nice and blurry. So I'm going to choose f2.8, and the camera says that it's 1/4 of a second. So let's take the image and see what happens. For a second, or third rather, image, I've chosen again a similar sort of idea, getting in close to a flower. So I've gone in for this little white with the yellow central area, and I quite like the contrast with the red, which will come out quite dark. So the camera settings, again f2.8, this time it's 1/8 of a second, and I've focused, so I'm hoping to get this very nice blurred, but quite a tight bit of focus. So we'll see if it works or not. For this final image, I've decided to take advantage of the textured flooring. So I focused on this area here. I did have to hold down the stem just here to keep the flower facing towards the camera. The camera settings, it's f8 because I want to make sure everything's in focus, and that means that it's going to be 1 second. So let's take the photo. 4 images hopefully. So now's the time to go off and develop our film. So I've developed the film in my Caffenol, and I'll produce probably another video in detail how I actually use the Caffenol to develop the film. But here are the negatives, and you can see quite clearly that the final 3 images look pretty good. But the first image I'm not so sure about. It looks quite thin, so I'm a little bit concerned how that will turn out. But the only way to find out, of course, is to normally go in the darkroom and produce a contact sheet. But for this first video I'm going to go onto the computer and just scan the images onto the computer to allow me to assess the images, and then from that assessment I can go ahead and hopefully print an image. So I'm going to use my Epson Perfection V370 scanner and Epson Scan software. Just running through the settings very quickly. It's not super important to me because obviously I'm only just using this as a guide. We select photo mode, Transparency unit, black and white negative film, 16-bit grayscale, resolution 3200 and scanning quality 2. The image format is going to be JPEG. I'm going to choose a setting. I'm going to use Pentax P30 because that's the camera, and I might just add still life if I can. Yes, I can. Just make sure I've got number 1. Then the location, I'm going to put it in the Pentax P30, which is on the desktop. Now I've already previewed, I've hit the preview button, and we get these rendering of these images, the first image, and then I just select the image border and just click, hold and drag, and then that reveals that actually, despite my initial concern, the negative doesn't look too bad actually from this point of view here, but we'll only really find out when we hit the scan. So let's just hit the scan button and wait. With all the images scanned, I've now put them into my photo editor, and all I've done is just remove some of the dust particles, which I'll have to be really careful in the literal darkroom, of course. So looking at the first image of the vase of flowers with the background, as expected, everything's in focus, a lot of texture with the blind at the back, and with the camera centered, focused around this area, and also the meter, it's rendered the scene really well. The whites are nice and white, it's very dark, it's a lot of contrast, I suppose a classic look really for a vase of flowers. So certainly a contender for the print. Looking at the second image, really pleased with the way it's come out. Excuse me. Again, I focused around this area, this flower here, so that's nice and sharp, and it's kind of progressively got less sharp as the flowers kind of come towards you, which is nice. Not quite sure the framing is exactly what I should have done. Perhaps on reflection I could have maybe come in a bit closer, and that would have perhaps rendered these flowers even more out of focus. But it is a contender for a print. Turning attention to the third image, very pleased again. It really has exposed the whites are white and the darks are very dark, which is nice, what I wanted, a lot of contrast. Would like to have had these bits a bit more out of focus, but the lens on reflection was a bit further away from the flowers than I should have perhaps been. But nonetheless, it's accurately rendered that photograph, so it's definitely a contender for a print. Finally, this fourth image, that's exactly what I wanted, I was looking for. Everything in focus, a lovely texture in the floor, really contributes to the flowers there. Again, the camera's meter has done a really good job, exposed it, had to do nothing. So all the images we've looked at haven't been tweaked in any way, just literally just taken out some of the dust particles. So I think, if I'm honest, this is probably the one that I would like to see printed. I would probably crop, I think, the image somewhere around, oops, maybe make it a square format. I think that might look quite nice like that. So I'll have to do that in the darkroom. I'll have to adjust the height so that it covers perhaps part of the image. So the plan is to produce an 8x10 image in the darkroom. I'm going to be using my Cafano as well, so there will be a slight sepia tone to the image. So without further ado, let's go into the darkroom. Here is the test strip from my first print, and we can see what I've done is I've tried to do every 2 seconds I've covered to give me a segment. So this is 2 seconds here, that will be 4 seconds, 6, 8, 10, and then beyond 10 up to about 18 at the end, it's not so clear. So looking at the test strip here, it's very clear really. If there's not much demarcation between 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12 to 18, and even that isn't quite what I was looking for. So I'm really looking, it seems somewhere around maybe 20 seconds could work. So I think what I'll do is, for the first print, I will aim for 20 something seconds. There is a little bit of flexibility with my Caffenol developer as well. I don't know that I developed it fully. This test strip was developed for 5 minutes rather, 5 minutes. So I think I have a little bit of flexibility. So in summary, I'm going to go for 20 seconds under the enlarger, and then I'll develop for somewhere between 4 and 5 minutes. It was only 18 months ago that I first developed a print using Caffenol. Since then I haven't been in the darkroom. Am I pleased with this first print? Absolutely I am. I will never cease to be in awe as you watch the print slowly form in the murky waters of your developer, and I really am very, very pleased with this. Clearly the sepia tone isn't to the liking of everybody, but I think it suits this subject really well. Are there things that can be improved? Well, of course there are, absolutely. Contrast. Now, the contrast can be resolved, I think. Whether it's a limitation of the Caffenol developer, I'm not sure. I will pursue that. Whether I need to include some contrast filters, I think that's probably more likely a first port of call. But I'm really pleased with the overall process that I've had to relearn again, and absolutely delighted, as I say, with this print. So I will be pursuing this. It won't be the only developer I use. Without a doubt I will be using other developers, but certainly I'd like to chase this through. The idea of using one developer for your negatives and then using the same for print seems really quite logical for me. But as I say, I will be probably using other developers as well. It certainly is a learning curve, and really that's the whole purpose of this series of videos. And I hope you'll continue to find them interesting if you decide to continue to view them. First print, absolutely delighted.